For special counsel Robert Mueller to resign. This is because of what they call, quote, a conflict, obvious conflict of interest, that being Mueller served as FBI director while then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton oversaw the Uranium One deal. Also, this all unfolding as special counsel Mueller reportedly has, quote, enough evidence to file charges against former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, along with his son, also named Michael Flynn. Joining me now, one of those congressmen calling for Mueller's resignation, Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs. Congressman, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Charles. So
this news broke on Friday. It was pretty interesting because it reflected what a lot of people in the public thought for lack of any other term, it was common sense. But to see actually Republican congressmen call for this was really sort of shocking. How likely is it that it will happen, though?
Well, I think there's a significant number of my colleagues who think this should happen, but I think there are also maybe some who don't think this should happen. They want to steady the course. They think Mr. Mueller's a great guy, and I don't know whether he's a great guy or not, but I do know this. There sure is an appearance of conflict, and when there's that kind of appearance of conflict, maybe he should step aside.
Well, I think over the weekend you had Paul Ryan, who said Congress actually pledged that Congress would not interfere with the Mueller Russian probe. Was that sort of a stand-down order to the rest of his colleagues?
Well, I don't know. There are many of us who look at this thing and we say, hey, what happened with Uranium One? They had evidence of extortion, bribes, money laundering. Mr. Mueller was the FBI director at the time. He didn't disclose any of that. Now, I have a problem with that, and now he's the guy investigating everything dealing with Russian interference, and guess what? All that comes back to Mr. Mueller, Mr. Comey, Mr. Rosenstein. All these guys played on the same team for all these years, and now we continue to get leaks like on General Flynn. This is a problem, and it indicates that there's a conflict of interest, and Mr. Mueller should step down. Now, I don't know where the leadership's going to be, but I'm hoping that we can get something done on this, because if you want to investigate this, we've got investigations going on in Congress right now, but we should not have somebody who has at least a bare minimum the appearance of conflict doing this.
And I think I think the White House is in agreement with you on this, and yet you had Senator Corker and I think maybe Graham coming out to again circling the wagons around Bob Mueller, and I just find it interesting that some very smart and well-thinking Republicans who say, hey, this is just common sense, the better part of valor, are getting this kind of pushback.
Yeah, I don't understand it, quite frankly, because it isn't just those of us in the Republican conference in the House that are calling upon this. You have people who are investigating this and have been investigating this for years. You've got the Wall Street Journal. You've got people writing in the Hill. They all recognize the same thing we've recognized. I've been calling on this for months, that Mr. Mueller needs to stand down, step aside. Right. And if you want to proceed, then proceed in another way, in another venue, maybe with somebody else. But you can't have the same people that have been working on this for years that never got to the bottom of this and actually hid some of this from Congress, it seems to be. You can't let those guys go on, continue to do this ostensible investigation when it looks like they may have been relying on the Fusion GPS dossier to get warrants against Americans. This is just incredible to me that people are defending this kind of conduct.
It's amazing. Congressman Andy Biggs, maybe as these leaks continue, you'll get more folks who see the light. I appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thanks, Charles. Good to be with you.
Joining us tonight, Editor-in-Chief of the Daily Caller, Christopher Bedford, also author of the new book, The Art of the Donald. Great to have you with us. Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. Greg, great to have you with us. Let's start, Christopher, let's start with you. First of all, the president right now saying that he is going to deliver to all of those folks with a tax reform plan. How confident are you? Because you've been studying the proposition.
I've been studying the proposition, and Donald Trump has put forward a lot of different solid policies. He's put forward exactly what he ran on. And Paul Ryan, even, he's been criticized a lot, but he's basically passed the Trump agenda. Where it's died in every single level has been Mitch McConnell's Senate. Now, Mitch McConnell doesn't have the kind of power that old Senate leaders used to have, but he's got Republicans who are backing out on all of the promises that they made and the promises that the president made. So I think the chances that this gets through the Senate this year are low.
Are low. And you know that the conclusion there Chris was jarring. I don't think I could argue vigorously with you at this point. Greg, let me turn to another part here, and this is a president who is still dealing with an out of control, it appears, special counsel.
Right.
And Congress is making it clear he's going to get to do whatever he wants to do to this administration.
The special counsel has 3 disqualifying conflicts of interest: Uranium One, the Trump dossier, and any Trump Russian obstruction of justice related to James Comey, because they're longtime friends, partners, and allies. This is a man who should never have taken this job and should now recuse himself and step down. Bring somebody else in. It doesn't mean the investigation goes away, but I don't think Americans will ever have confidence in the integrity of the results with this man in charge.
Chris, do you see this as a crisis now of confidence in the Justice Department, the FBI, as well as the special counsel? They're all one part and piece of the whole.
And a deserved crisis in confidence. Americans are basically realized that everybody's tied up in everyone. They're all connected. They're all neighbors. They're all old friends. They have conflicts of interest. The things that Manafort is now in trouble for, Donald Trump's former campaign chairman, it turns out that involved John Podesta and his brother and their lobbying group. Everything is intertangled here, and it's going to be really difficult to find someone who can actually come through, be independent, and deliver a ruling that the Americans will agree with. And no matter what the ruling is, if it comes out that there's no collusion, the FBI has presented no evidence so far, Americans on the Democratic side won't believe it anyway. So it's going to be a tough road.
It's backwards. There should be a special counsel investigating Hillary Clinton, not Donald Trump. There is a plethora of evidence that she may have committed up to 14 different crimes in 4 different areas.
And a Republican-led Congress and Senate are refusing to move forward, and the Attorney General, the Republican Attorney General, taking no steps. Greg Jarrett, Christopher Bedford, I hope you both will come back soon.
I'm not under investigation. You know, when it comes to Russia collusion, they're looking at the wrong person. Absolutely the wrong person.
That was President Trump talking to Cheryl Atkinson, claiming he's not a focus of special counsel Robert Mueller's ongoing probe. The panel's back with me. I want to start with something you were saying, Chairman Rogers, about how we're not doing enough or really anything to stop Russian interference in the 2018 or 2020 elections. When asked if President Trump is doing enough to prevent future foreign influence in U.S. elections, 37% said yes, 59% said no. And a lot of intelligence officials agree with the people who say no, not to necessarily blame it on President Trump, but just not enough is being done.
I mean, think of the political narrative now. Nobody, if you say you want to do more in the Russian investigation, you think right. Trump was smooching on old Vladimir Putin. If you think that he didn't, then oh my God, the end of the world has come. So what we really need to do is separate what's happening. Let the investigation take its course. We should stop talking about it in terms of Republican and Democrat. What we do know is that the Russians came into a U.S. election and they tried to influence. And they tried to separate us by race and demographics. They purposely did this. And by the way, they did this in the 60s and the 70s. They just weren't very good at it.
Yeah.
They tried it.
This time they were pretty good.
This time they have taken all the things that they've learned from the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, and now they have social media. They can reach into people's homes, and they can figure out, just like an ad to sell you a pair of glasses that you're looking at, they know that you're looking for glasses. They know people have some certain sets of beliefs, and they were trying to take advantage of those beliefs to get Americans to go against Americans. This is really dangerous, and this is the way we should be talking about what the Russians are doing, and we ought to be adamant, stand together, and push back on what they're trying to do. And they will do it in the 2018 election. I don't know any analyst, any intelligence person I know doesn't think that's going to happen.
I want to ask you, too, about news. The Russian lawyer Natalia Neselnitskaya, she was at the center of that Trump Tower meeting with Donald Trump Jr. and Jared Kushner and Paul Manafort. She told Bloomberg that at that meeting, Donald Trump Jr. said his father would be opening to revisiting the Magnitsky Act, which is the thing that sanctions Russians who committed human rights abuses, if the president was elected. And Trump Jr. Also said, according to this lawyer, and again, I'm not saying we should trust a Russian lawyer, but also said that he was interested in documents that she said she had related to Hillary Clinton. Now, Trump Jr.'s lawyer just said to CNN in response, quote, "What this interview shows, once again, is that everyone in attendance has a very similar account as to what transpired." Basically, confirming the story that Don Jr. said, something along the lines of, if he gets elected, we can talk about that, but I want to see the stuff on Hillary Clinton. What's your response?
Yeah, my response would be if that conversation did not take place, the nature of that conversation was not that, I do not think Donald Trump Jr.'s lawyer would have had a problem beating back that narrative. So that's concerning, which is why we currently have an investigation going on, and I think we need to let that investigation happen.
Doesn't it at least suggest, David, the willingness to collude?
Listen, Jake. You remember when this is alleged to have taken place in early, I think, June, right?
June or July, yeah, somewhere in there.
Early June is my recollection. Maybe it was. This campaign was still worried about a floor fight at the convention. There was no Russian narrative at the time. I don't know what happened at this meeting or not happened. I can't speak to that. I know what they were worried about. I know what the campaign was worried about, whether or not there was going to be a floor fight at the convention. That's what the campaign was really worried about. So I'm not discounting it. I'm not saying that I agree with Chairman Rogers. I think that let the investigation take its place, let it take its course. I think as Americans, we should all be very concerned about any type of Russian interference or outside interference in our election process. I think the Russians and other countries are sitting back laughing, seeing how they can exploit us further in the future. And I think we need to take every measure we can. They've had hearings on the Hill with some of the social media companies to try to peel back the onion there to see what we can do more. I think we need more cooperation amongst those types of groups. I'm hopeful that our intelligence agencies are doing everything we can to combat these things and put up firewalls and fight the fight in cyberspace to preclude those things from occurring in 2018 and into the future.
Simone, are you worried at all that Democrats are counting on a conclusion by Robert Mueller that might not happen? I mean, it might be that all that he does is the two indictments of Manafort and Gates, and Papadopoulos is pleading guilty to lying, and there's nothing more than that. And if that's all that happens, don't Democrats have some answering to do and some alternative narratives to discuss?
Look, I definitely think the grassroots progressive left and Democrats are looking for these large indictments, these looming indictments to come quickly. And I want to caution folks to say this could drag on for 4 years. We don't know how long this investigation will happen. So I think it's incumbent upon Democrats on the Hill and the Democratic Party leadership to have to come to the table with something. And so what is the answer to countering what the Russians are doing in terms of meddling in our elections, in terms of social media? What are Democrats saying? What are our plans for folks in 2018 in terms of the economy? It's not just enough to say the other guy's really bad. They've got some crazy stuff going on over there. We have to bring something to the table. And I do think we are ceding the conversation on the social media piece a little too much. We have to dig down.
And I give a lot of credit to Simone for saying that. You can't just say Russians, and hope to win. You have to put out a platform that's something that voters want. Economy, jobs, et cetera. So props to Simone for coming out with that.
Simone, David, and Congressman Rogers, thanks one and all for being here. Coming up.